let's start this way. So what this has to do with computer vision? So I think the problem and challenges I'm finding that, there are different models, different techniques. People invest a lot of time, money to create a model to solve classification or regression problems. But then if the data changes, if there's a data drift or problem changes, the model doesn't work. They have to throw the model, start a new model, and the cycle goes away. So I'm coming with the process or a technique or an architecture where in the end, I'm going to prove you that we can create models automatically by learning the problem space. So that's the heading of my topic, that modular neural network architecture optimization using reinforcement learning as we speak. So what's the challenge, as we know that the modular network, there are the techniques, there are the models which can be, they can adapt to the faster data adaptation. These are the benefits I just wanted to list down. I want to learn the strategy from the network architectures incrementally, and I can build a new architecture if the problem changes, as I spoke. And then how reinforcement learning is going to help me to learn a strategy among the problem space to find the next best model if the problem changes. So why modular network, right? I think I just spoke about that. So what my goal is to use this network, the architecture I'm going to apply, to a wide variety of problems. And I want to learn those problems. I want to learn the problem space. And then when the next problem comes, which is part of that subset or slightly different, or the data changes, I will have my model ready. You don't have to build everything from scratch. What is the motivation? The motivation is that, with this modular approach, I can use RL, which is policy-driven. When the changing data sets, the model will adapt to that. I can use heterogeneous network architecture for streaming data. We can adjust to moving targets, like some of the things which Tesla is trying to work on before they make a fully autonomous car. Need to adapt to different learning algorithms, So keeping the learning for my models very open and agile so that we move as the problem space moves. The challenges. So there's a lot of research. I know there are some Chinese people, I've read some papers, they have done a lot of research in automatic neural architecture design, but they still lack the absolute guarantee. There is no trust in that model. They do perform to some level, but not the way we want. And also, as we get more data means more there is a need for classification, more problems we have to solve. So what's wrong with traditional classification algorithms? They are different to apply. They're very rigid. It's hard to adapt to new problem space. One of the architecture they have is called ensemble architecture, which I'm going to touch briefly about that. They have used RL effectively. They try to use reinforcement learning to adapt and learn a policy, but they will be more into discrete space, which I'm going to tell about in a few minutes. Stop working. Okay. Again, similar motivation. I'm going to skim through some slides because, we have a lot to cover. What's the background? So I just talked about there are many approaches. They are trying to search. Still, there is a work going on to find and optimize next best neural network architecture. There are some successful attempts. They want to, explore the multidimensional space. They want to see some possible architectures, including, they try to make the model better by adding layers, dropping some neurons, adding some neurons. Sometimes they're lucky, but it's constant learning, and we want to build an automation. Like the whole purpose of AI is to build intelligent systems to solve problem intelligently. So why not we have a neural network technique to have intelligent neural network models so they adapt. So how come RL can help us? RL has been used to create a policy and incrementally build a neural network classifiers for a broad distribution of problems. Basically, they're trying to learn the strategy. Sadly, existing methods, based on RL or ensemble architectures, they conduct research in a discrete space, which is highly inefficient. I'm going to show you why. Some background, I'm continuing like they are going to solve mostly pure classification problem. As the problem domain or space increases, the classification error. They are trying to, using the old technique by adding layers or dropping some units. So what we need a policy to learn from a problem space and, and get an optimized network for a given problem. And then I'm going to talk about NOW architecture, which is network architecture optimization. It was highly influenced initially with some people have done it, the Chinese paper I read about, and then I'll see how I can expand it further. You can see the diagram, right? In the bottom, we see that there is a neural architecture in the left-hand side, and the neural architecture out on the decoder side. So what the attempt they have made it, that they have tried to embed the architecture into a 2D problem space. So the spot in the 2D space, each, like EX is my neural network architecture for that problem. And the continuous space is where I'm going to learn different but similar kind of problems, so that we have a pattern, so that I can learn by doing gradient ascent. And with this performance prediction function, I can understand this whole space, the lay of the land, where I have different variation of network models which are going to solve similar problems. So we have encoder, we have this embedding space, and then we decode it back. And the decoder model should be an optimized architecture. Also, we're using POM-MDP. Those of you know, partially observable Markov decision process. The idea is that the embedding space is partially observable. We don't know what next, when we move around the space of problem domain, we don't know what next architecture is. So it's like we don't have a complete concrete idea about the whole space. The limitations, it's a two-dimensional space. So, now there is a research going on into multi-dimensional, because along with the network, we want to also embed their hyperparameters, all these attributes, accuracy along with the network. So we want to have a very, as complete as about the model, we want to embed it part of that. These are some of the challenges we have. And then also, there is no guarantee that now will lead to a best performing network. So let's see. So next step is to add RL to that, add an exploration policy. As we talked about, they have done some research on embedding to the problem space, different kind of networks. Now we want to see if RL can learn and pick up that space and understand the complete problem domain and can deal with the data drift. So these are some of the old architectures they have tried. You can see that. Sorry for the image is not very clear. If you can see on the left side, they have this ensemble of network 1, 2, 3. They can go and create the, for the certain problem, but if the problem changes or data changes, it has some backup networks, which it has learned. It can add or drop a network, or in the next example, it can add a layer or drop some nodes. So those were traditional techniques they were trying to use to try to reconfigure or fine-tune their models with a new problem. Also, ensemble architectures, they are very discrete. And we saw the embedding space is very, very continuous. So the benefit of continuous space is that, we can embed very high dimensional action, to that. And discrete has very low dimensional continuous space. And also we have a big win. We have a potential of gradient that we can, do a gradient ascent or descent to find the best next model. Also, there's a Q-learning. Q-learning is a special kind of type of RL. So my question is, can I use a Q-learning on an embedding space of now, which we saw before? So some of the benefits, one of the key things is that, in the embeddings, we can map network X to a state S with its performance, accuracies, and all other attributes we talked about. And with the enough training, I can guarantee that I can get an optimized network for a specific problem to a certain level of accuracy. So that's a big win. Also, the embedding and the accuracies are independent of the problem. They're not tightly coupled. So as we see, we will, explore the place. We will get the next best network, but we also want to make sure that we have a good accuracy of a model. Some of the diagrams showing that, these dots are my networks, and gradient ascent will go and find the best network for that. So for different problems, we get different performance in the embedding states. Also, again, I'm repeating n number of times that this proposed architecture can adjust faster than other architectures. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to learn, and initially I started with the fully connected networks to up to a certain size and make a very simpler modification space. These were my initial challenges. How do I build a performance network? How do I embed network which can be tractable? How can I build more generic performance function? How do I, embed ensemble of networks, unlike now where they embed one network at a time. And now they were doing one network at a time, but now we are learning the whole space. And I also want to make sure that the embeddings also correlate to the performance of the network. So these are the key ingredients for my approach, and I'm not going to go, these are more theoretical aspects, but I'm using reinforcement learning, I'm using Q function, I'm learning the embedding space, action space, and the policy, which is through the RL. So I'll go fast on these things. These are more theoretical. Q function, anybody can Google about that and read about that, but I just wanted to put some theory here. Action space is the embedding space we talked about. But most important is the policy. Policy is a strategy which specifies which action to take in each state. So it helps us to maximize the function to get an optimized network of the problem. It helps me to estimate a Q value for any state, which is nothing but an embedding point plus the problem-specific accuracy numbers. Like gradient of that Q function I talked about will give me that gradient, sorry. So again, policy is also independent of problem. It is learning the space, it's not learning the problem. It's learning like, what direction if I move next. This is the embedding where I'll find this architecture which has this much accuracy, and these kind of problem variations I can deal with. And policy is also, it's a strategy which helps me to map the action to the state, embedding state. A small diagram, again, I'm showing you that I'm embedding these networks, small dots, problem-specific parameters, and the Q value. If you see that, QS gradient by embeddings, I am finding an action on a Q function, which is nothing but a gradient there. We can go search and do some optimum, policy. There's a Bell-Mill equation. There's some theory behind that. Okay, so different Q functions can give me different directions in the embedding space, and then we can build a predictive function using RL, where the problem-specific parameters that we can give as an additional input when building this predictive function, they help me to find the best network with accuracy. And also, the space is hosting my different networks, and we have to come up with the language, like I have to embed the networks, I have to decode the networks. So this is all part of the housekeeping, part of the basic architecture I have to create. Also, the best part is I need a function that can explore this embedding space for all given network and generate the network out of this space. So given a problem, I'm going to embed this problem, I'm going to do a lot of gradient ascent, descent, and find the best network which I can, and then I can decode it back, and that will be my optimized network. And I've done some experiments. A lot of networks I tried, I had these pre-built accuracies for that. Like for a simple example, like let's take 500 networks, 50 networks, 10 data sets. Initially I work for defense, so we use a lot of classified data, which we cannot bring it here, but there's a UCI data set. You can, download a lot of problems. They have a lot of data related to those problems, so we can take a regression problem, we can take classification problem, we can take computer vision problems, and we can learn the space. So these are like some of the experiments I did. You can see how the gradient is flowing down. From Q function, gradient is flowing. So like, state S is embedded to a place E in that space. And then we get, when we decode it, I get a S. And then also we are embedding the S bar, which is the all the accuracies and attributes of that network. And then how the policy is going to drive, and then back propagates the gradient. And so we do two things. We learn the accuracy space, and also we learn the embedding space. Some of the how the trajectories are going into space, like trajectory 1, 2, 3. So as we go and my RL policy is learning about the space. These are the trajectories I form. I do a lot of training about the network. We start with a random initial policy and then random reward. As people who know about reinforcement learning, there's a reward which, the actor critic work together in conjunction. And then, state, action, reward, success state, they together play a key role in computing the error, which is called Bellman error or reconstruction error, which is slowed down as a backward propagation. So initially, I took 300 steps per trajectory as per the RL policy, which was random and exploratory. So we go it random, we want to learn the space. Accuracy will tell us how the network is performing at each spot. The two benefits of this learning I talked about, the forward use helps to compute the policy, which is learning about the space, where action, like it tells what action should I take, and as a result of that action, what network has produced. And backward use help us to learn the embedding space. I've traversed the space. I know this is the network. This is the accuracy. This is the trajectory is telling us like how the whole lay of the land is. I just passed through this whole mathematical jargon about actor critic, what we are reinforcing. Some of the challenges we have with actor critic methods, some solutions we have, like these are the challenges I found when I was doing. There's a lot of noisy gradients. We have high variability of log probability, cumulative reward values. It causes unstable learning sometimes as the policy distribution is skewed to a non-optimal direction. So, the solution is make a smaller gradients, take small steps to understand the space. And then there are two, Q actor critic and advantage critic. And then further down, I'm going to talk about TDD3, the temporal deterministic policy, where we are having a pair of critic and pair of actor networks, so that there is a delay, and it helps us to, take care of the noise and all the errors. TD3, we talked about twin delayed deep deterministic policy gradient, where target value has a high variance and noisy gradients. When updating the critic can cause unstable learning. It's an extension of DDPG, deep deterministic policy gradient. Instead of pairs, we use pair of critic networks and actors, and they, the backup actor critic basically helps us to resolve any errors, any noises we have. Some of the diagrams on the right side, you see that how the reward, actor critic, they play together, and they, with the help of agent, they take the next action and learn the whole embedding. Again, breaking down the problem into a very simple manner. If the first layer, which I say, let's say this is a network problem with the 2 layers, very simple problem with layer 1 has 5 nodes, layer 2 has 7 nodes. The one hot vector can basically a space holder where we can have all the accuracies, all the attributes of the problem we can encode there, and the accuracy of the network, which we have pre-trained. It goes through our architecture, lambda layer splits it. We make the network parameters go through the encoder model and decoder model, so they learn together. They know how to encode and decode. And then also on the other branch, what I'm doing is I'm merging back. I'm concatenating the encoded network with the network parameters, and then putting back to the accuracy model and learning the accuracy and then decoding it back. So let's say, I put it precisely accurate accuracy, which we embedded it, and the decoder has the accuracy, but it can be a little off. It can be better, it can be a little off, but this is all part of learning, a lot of training, we do that. A little flow diagram, how things are behaving, how these all actor critic, encoder, decoder, all they are working together. And a little bit of actor critic, like, actor is directly mapping my action space, states to the action. It's adding some random noise because we have this TD3 model, and then we're doing gradient descent. We don't do gradient descent on actor target network. We do some soft network updates. So there is an update. Once we do the gradients, we just update the target 2 network. We have a pair of networks there. So critic pair has the twice a layer, and they run in parallel. As a little bit more details about the results are in two separate output, critic target, and critic target network finds the next state using the smallest value of two critic pair network. So the whole exercise is to make sure that we have less error and we are getting an optimized value, and we're learning the space. This diagram is pretty much how, because the embedding space, it's very hard to learn, and we initially found that we have a lot of holes there, and we were not covering the whole space. So we started randomly sampling, I just said 25% from random linear network, 30% from the buffer where I have already learned. I feed them back, and then 45%, some random, some legal and illegal networks. Because not only it has to learn the legal networks, which are in the embedding space, some illegal networks, so that it can, filter them out. And then on the right-hand side, if you see, we have different nodes, and we are doing a lot of forward tree lookup. So we go to depth of 3 and 4, and we're not only seeing that what next in my next step, what all our networks are. We go a couple of like a depth, a tree search kind of thing, and we see like what's forward. Like if we get a better reward if you go through steps further. So once we have a better network 2 or 3 steps further, we will feed it back, and it gets propagated back, and this whole training. So it's like 2,000 episodes. Almost each episode I had 300 steps, and in a given day, and so it takes me 2 days or something with my whatever the resources I have available at my university, and it's constant learning that way. So, the final training steps are we update critic, we update actor, we update the target network, and as you see that, the target networks are slowly moving the actor target and critic target networks toward the trained actor main and trained critic main network by soft updates. So the target networks are lagging behind the actors so that, if they can quickly adjust to the noises and all. Results. So the encoder-decoder accuracy model, which I call, is trained with different classification problem. The embedding space created with the help of encoder-decoder and successfully mapped the network architecture into a continuous vector space. Embedding correctly preserved the network with the help of encoder, and I could correctly decode it and predict its accuracy, and was able to learn and investigate embeddings and was able to predict accuracy for different problems. I was able to compute gradient of an accuracy network on embeddings, successfully did optimization on this embedding space and reached good accuracy predictions for multiple prediction problems. I updated my architecture with actor-critic network and also used reinforcement learning effectively to learn the policy for optimization. And the gradient descent on the accuracy function with respect to embeddings is used by actor and critic networks. So some of these spots you can see, these are the real network from the embedding space we have projected. And you see I'm talking about the holes that it did not learn the complete embedding space. So we have to, the trajectories we found, it is leading to my optimized network, which we did, but we are missing some there's, in the scatter plot, we found some holes in the trajectories. So how do we solve that? So, the diagram I was studying, that prompted me to take the networks on this variation. Not only from the random relay networks, we have to take from legal, illegal, from the buffers. We tried different techniques. Also, I did the multi-step approach where I'm doing a forward lookup. So trying to cover as much as embedding space I can. So this is my new strategy to cover those holes. So we tried forward looking, and we found that we were able to cover a lot of gaps. This is a vector plot. My accuracy, the best network I had at this point, 3 point whatever, that minus 5.4. So as you can see that this vector plot is pointing me to that goal point, the best optimized architecture for the problem we tried. Some of the example of trajectories, how they are reaching me to the goal point. So coming back to the practical application. So this is a satellite image for a tank, moving tank, right? So the challenges are we have a low pixel classification, model can be brittle, all those things. So how my approach can help me, because we did a lot of training with different kind of battle tanks, different kind of aircraft, all these army or defense assets you can talk about. So the last slide I want to talk about is that it did recognize, it got me to the best network to identify the moving tank in the battlefield. And then, especially I want to talk briefly about this, that explainability or trust in AI is a very important part, at least in the defense sector. We cannot just take a risk. There is, especially healthcare, defense, they are very risk averse. So we try different explainability models like SHAP, LIME, these are established frameworks, but the technique which we are trying to do is the smaller networks, we saw that, we train them enough and we make them very tightly. Let me put the example of this service-oriented, small service-oriented architecture. We have each network which are trained to do what they're supposed to do with certain accuracy. So we have a kind of certain confidence factor with each network. So when we put together the brick architecture, we propagate that confidence, and when we say this is the tank, we say, okay, this is 78% confidence we have that we have identified this tank, or this is 93% confidence. So we don't claim always that this is the answer. We have certain confidence factor attached to the answers, and as we learn more and as we get more training data, we get more confident. But this is an example, like we got this moving tank raw data, we did some data curation, we talked about, clean it up, went to the model, and then while we are learning about this, we are also putting some confidence factor. Different kind of matrices. Assessment metrics, quantitative results can be attained by the model with high contribute features. So we push it back and we say, this is a battle tank because it has a thread, it has a tunnel, it's a kind of the way it is moving. A lot of attributes we have learned about this problem. So I think that's it about in 30 minutes. I want to give whatever time I have used. So any questions we have, I can talk about that. Thank you.
I think this was your dry run for your dissertation. So we can do one quick question, because I don't want to hold anyone much longer. Consider any questions. All right, it's yours.
Pardon me?
Just say it.
So first of all, very cool, the neural architecture search and like the other ones you mentioned, and now this too, all very cool areas. So the training step that you mentioned, I thought I saw somewhere on the slide that the target network doesn't actually go through the gradient descent. That's the previous parts. Does the training of the critic and the model network?
Yeah. Actor critic, right.
And the actor and the critic network. Does that happen after every step, after every change in the
Yes,
network, or do you have other ways of estimating
absolutely,
accuracy?
yeah. So good question. So once we propagate the gradient, we go through actor critic. Then we go and we have programmatically, I send it them to update the target network. So there's a lag behind. We have I don't know, those who know the machine learning, something called tau factor. We basically, tau is like we delay 8.005. We can fine tune that parameters to see. So now the target networks are lagging behind so that they don't, the idea is that we don't go into wrong direction too far. It's like somebody is keeping an eye on how the gradient is moving.
Thanks.
Let's end this and then we can chat later. Let's everyone give Raghav a big hand.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.